Hey guys, it's Madison Estes, writer and freelance editor and horror enthusiast, and today I'm going to be talking about the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Before I get into what I liked and didn't like, I want to start off by saying this film has generated a lot of controversy, and most of it I think is unearned, which depending on your horror movie taste could end up being a good or bad thing. Personally, I don't go chasing after films just because there's controversy, and if you're that kind of person, I think that you're going to be disappointed with this film because it wasn't super graphic, at least not as graphic as some people are saying, and I didn't feel that the way that it depicted school shootings or the fact that it included that storyline in the film was exploitative the way that they said it is. So if that's what you're looking for, I think you're going to be disappointed or at least underwhelmed. I'm going to start off with some of the things that I liked about this film first, and one of the things that I liked is actually one of the biggest controversies. One of the characters in this film, Lila, is the survivor of the school shooting. Yes, the mere inclusion of a school shooting subplot is what has caused so much controversy around this film. Keep in mind, it doesn't show anything. There is one flashback scene where she's laying on the floor, and obviously she's surrounded by her dead classmates, which is a little disturbing, although if you're picking up Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, I feel like you should be able to handle that. You don't see the shooter, you don't see any of the shootings, you literally just see the aftermath. And I feel like if you can't handle that, you're probably not going to enjoy the rest of the film anyways. So the reason that they included this subplot in the story is because this character has to face her fears and kind of overcome her fear of guns in order to defend herself from Leatherface. I felt like this is one of the things that the movie actually did really well. I felt like they did a really good job of not focusing on the shooting itself too much and not glorifying it or giving too much attention to school shooters. I don't know, I just keep mulling it over in my head, like why people think that this is exploitative whenever, again, they didn't really show anything except the aftermath, and they really focused on the survivor and her PTSD and the trauma she was going through and kind of showed how she overcame that in order to protect herself and her family. I thought they did a really good job with it. I didn't feel like it was exploitative at all. And another criticism I saw is that it just didn't make sense that she would try to kill Leatherface with a gun after being a victim of gun violence. And I just feel like this train of thought doesn't make sense. Like, someone is coming after you with a chainsaw. You're not gonna try to stab them with a knife, okay? I don't care what your thoughts are on gun violence. If someone is coming after you with a chainsaw, you want to take them out from a distance. So that limits your options. You're going to want to use either a gun, a grenade, or like a crossbow or a bow and arrow. And of those options, the gun is the one that makes the most sense, and it's the one that you're most likely going to be able to get your hands on. I literally saw someone say, well, why didn't she defend herself with a chainsaw? Oh, I don't know. First of all, maybe because there wasn't just chainsaws all over the place, but there were guns. And second of all, you don't want to go up against a dude that clearly has at least a foot on you and is bulky as heck. When you're a tiny petite girl, you don't want to go up against that. Even if you have a chainsaw, if he has one too, you're on an equal playing field. Whereas if you have a gun, you can take him out from afar. This is common sense stuff. Now, I understand thinking that for cool factor, it might make sense to have a character go up against Leatherface and have dueling chainsaws. That does sound like it would actually be pretty cool, but that's not ideal. That's not what a logical character would ideally do in that situation. Honestly, it's kind of like bringing a chainsaw to a chainsaw fight instead of bringing a gun to a chainsaw fight. Either way, you have someone with a chainsaw and someone with a gun in a little bit of distance. The person with the gun in the distance is going to win. Another thing that really irritated me, again, this isn't about the movie, but it's about the controversy and the feedback, was someone saying, it's like they're saying that sometimes guns are good. Sometimes guns are good, okay? When someone's trying to break into your house and you're trying to defend yourself from a chainsaw-wielding maniac, it's good to have a gun. It's not all just about self-defense, though. The character Lila actually was a little bit interested in the redneck's guns, even before there was a threat. It's almost like she had sort of a dark fascination with the subject after being the survivor of this shooting. But I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. There's people saying, well, she should be terrified of guns. She should not want to be around guns if she's a survivor of a school shooting. It doesn't make any sense. To me, that sounds a lot like whenever people say, oh, this girl was raped, she shouldn't be promiscuous. People deal with trauma in a lot of different ways, and I think that it makes a lot of sense for someone that was the victim of a school shooting to be fascinated with guns. I feel like you could go in a lot of directions, where you're terrified of them, where you're fascinated with them, where you have maybe mixed feelings or even no strong feelings, because, you know, some people aren't afraid of the gun, they're afraid of the shooter, and then some people, you know, that translates into being afraid of the gun itself. It's a lot of different factors, and I don't feel like it's as simple as, oh, well, she was the victim of gun violence, so she's going to be terrified of guns for the rest of her life. So aside from the fact that I felt like they handled the shooting subplot respectfully, I also like the fact that it was sort of an empowerment story. Like, this character that's obviously dealing with some severe trauma, by the end of the story, she feels somewhat empowered by being able to protect herself and her sister. If anything, I felt like that's what the story was. It was an empowerment story for people that have faced trauma, for people that have been through traumatic experiences and developed PTSD, and maybe at times have felt like they were helpless, you know, being able to reclaim some of that power. To me, that's what that subplot was about, and I liked it a lot. And while we're on this topic, this is kind of a tangent, but she's like a very petite girl, and some of the guns she was carrying were like really big, and I imagine really heavy. And she handled those guns like a pro. That's just one of my pet peeves in films. I haven't held a whole lot of guns, but every time I do hold a gun, I'm like, this is a lot heavier than I thought it was gonna be. And some of those guns looked really heavy, and she's just carrying them like a champ, because, you know, they're prop guns. Just once in a horror movie, I want to see, like, this petite girl grab a big gun and then just topple over. Like, just once I want to see her pull this big gun out and think that she's gonna be a badass, and then she just falls over because it's so much heavier than she thought it was gonna be. Okay, so aside from that subplot, my favorite thing, and honestly this is my favorite thing about the film, is the gore. The gore is amazing. The kills are so creative. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them are just so creative and unexpected. I love the gore in this film. Look, this is like the third or fourth direct sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're not reinventing the wheel here, okay? Things go stabby stab stab and slashy slash slash. They go from 0 to 100 real quick. And that's what I was expecting, and that's what this film delivered. You know, the bus scene, that's the scene that everyone's talking about right now, and I think that it deserves the hype. It's super gory, it's super fun. I love the way it was shot. I thought that it was great. Another death scene I loved was whenever one of the characters was being murdered inside the house and the door was swinging back and forth the whole time, so you could see a glimpse of what was happening, and then the door would shut and then it would swing the other way and you would see what was happening. I thought that that was a really creative shot and I loved it. I agree with some of the people that are saying you really ought to just shut your brain off for this film, because yeah, you kind of need to. Some of the characters were pretty obnoxious, and there were some things that they did in this film that didn't make any sense, and for me that's the biggest criticism I have with this film. It's the biggest criticism I have with a lot of slasher films, honestly. So shut your brain off, go into this film expecting blood and guts, and you'll be happy. But if you expect, you know, well-developed characters that make good decisions, you're going to be super disappointed with this film. It was super annoying that the girl that runs into the bus and tells the bus driver to shut the door, don't go out there, like, she doesn't tell him, hey, someone was murdered, there's a killer out there. It takes 2 seconds. Like, even if she's traumatized, you'd still think that she would say, there's a dead body out there or something, you know, not just shut the door. You know, it was just really ridiculous. It also didn't make sense that when the bus driver went off the bus that she didn't, like, close the doors, because that's what I would have done. Like, goodbye, bus driver. I'll figure out how to drive this bus away. You know, I think it would have actually been cooler to have Leatherface just frickin' saw his way into the bus, honestly. I don't know, maybe they couldn't afford for that, maybe that was not in their budget, but I felt like that would have been cool, you know, like, even characters making the right decisions, you know, staying on the bus, locking the door, even trying to barricade it, and then just having this massive force of a man breaking into the bus anyways. Because, I mean, he was able to saw through different parts of the bus. Why couldn't he saw his way into the bus, or, like, break one of the windows or something? I don't know. There was just a lot of other ways to handle that besides stripping the characters of common sense and making them do things that no one in that situation would do. Regardless of whether you liked or hated this film, I think almost everyone unanimously agrees that Sally's character was so unnecessary in this film. The only possible reason I could think for including her is because they were trying to make maybe some kind of commentary on, like, you can't run from your demons, you have to face them, as if Sally had been running from her demons. Although the way they made it sound like she'd been hunting him, so it sounds like she hadn't really been running from her demons all these years, that she wanted to face them. And I almost feel like if this film had been longer and they'd really focused on her wanting to come, you know, face to face with this the guy that had been, like, you know, this constant source of PTSD for her, then maybe that would have been a better film. Or maybe if it had just focused on Sally, maybe that would have been better. I don't know, but the way it was included, it just felt like a cheap knockoff of the Halloween films. Like, they're clearly drawing inspiration from those films, which I think is okay, but they just didn't execute it very well. And one more note on that is that the reason it works better in the Halloween films is because Jamie Lee Curtis is like the face of Halloween. She's been in multiple installments, whereas the character Sally, and not just the actress, obviously they couldn't get the same actress because she passed away. This character even has only been in one of the films. And so you don't have that sense of, oh, this is an inevitable conclusion, of, oh, we've been waiting for these two to face off and finally have closure with one of them killing the other. There's no sense of inevitability. That's another reason why it feels kind of like a gimmicky ripoff as opposed to it actually being effective the way it is in Halloween. Okay, another thing I thought was insanely stupid was the chainsaw in the wall. I'm sorry, but what? Another thing that bugs me about that scene was the missed opportunity, because the character is hiding under the bed for like 10 minutes and the whole time Leatherface is pounding against the wall and there's like debris and stuff like just, you know, floating in the air, and she doesn't sneeze. I'm like, that would have been the perfect moment for her to sneeze, and that would have been like a great moment, you know? Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting when he started banging against the wall and tearing the wall up. I guess I just thought he was angry over his mother or mother figure dying. I didn't really think that anything was going to come of it. But like whenever he pulled that chainsaw out of the wall, I was so confused. I was like, what is this film? Yeah, I just don't think that that was the awesome, cool moment that they were going for. I don't think that it had the impact that they thought it was going to have. Another thing that kind of bugged me was the fact that the redneck dude just like took the keys to their bus and car and was like, you can get these back when you show me the title. Like, first of all, who the heck does he think he is? Like, who died and made him the sheriff? Okay, now that I think about it, like the sheriff and the deputy did both just die, so maybe since he was like the only redneck in the vicinity with a shotgun, that just automatically made him the new sheriff. Either way, it just felt so illogical and forced, and you could tell that the writers just needed a way to get all of the characters trapped there without any way to leave, and it just felt really stupid to me. One more thing I want to talk about really quickly before I get into spoilers is the gentrification subtext in this movie. For those of you that don't know, this is whenever rich people start buying low-income property and building businesses and other things that increase the value of the property, which drives out the people that live in that region because they can no longer afford to keep up with the prices of everything escalating. So this film attempted to handle that political topic in a very half-hearted, light kind of way. Now, on the one hand, I kind of feel like subtle subtext in horror is more effective than overt, most of the time. The Purge movies are a really good example of overt politicalness in a horror film working really well. But obviously I was not expecting an overt political message in the third or fourth direct sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I was expecting a bloodbath, which is what this film mostly was. So I don't really care that they didn't really do it that well. There's some people saying, oh, you shouldn't, you know, address this unless you're gonna go full on and make it a full commentary. I don't really think that that's true, so I'm just kind of neutral. I felt like they kind of started it at the beginning of the film and then just sort of dropped it. The only thing I think that it added is that it gave the main character a reason to feel guilty a little bit because, you know, they did kind of basically steal this woman's home even though they didn't realize they were doing it. So it does develop the main character a little bit. It makes it seem like she has a conscience, you know, she cares about it. Even if it was an accident, she feels horrible about what happened, as opposed to Dante, who just does not care. They didn't really develop this subtext a lot or carry it through to the end of the film, and I don't really care because that's not why I decided to start watching this film, and I don't feel like the film was greatly harmed or helped by this plot at all. Like, it could have very easily been left out, but I'm not particularly upset that they decided to include it. So overall, I would give this film 3 out of 5 stars. I did not go into this film expecting a movie as good as the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I wasn't even expecting a sequel as good as the original remake, which I thought was a pretty darn good movie, actually. I went into this film expecting 4 things: a bloodbath with some creative kills, some super tense moments, some Texas rural scenery, and a killer wearing a mask made out of human flesh. And this film delivered on all 4. It also delivered on giving us 2 leads that I thought were somewhat sympathetic and were halfway decent leads. Before I end this video, I'm going to talk about a couple more things that involve spoilers, so if you haven't seen the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie yet, and this video hasn't put you off to watching it, I would go ahead and watch it now. But before you leave, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. If you don't, Leatherface is going to pull his chainsaw to the wall and saw your face off, because apparently that's where he keeps his chainsaw now. Okay, so I was actually texting someone who'd already seen it as I was watching the ending, and it really cracks me up how, like, right whenever the 2 sisters were getting into the car, I was telling them about how you don't really see the final girl trope anymore in slashers. It's almost as if it's become so cliche that filmmakers are, like, terrified to use that trope because, oh my gosh, I'll be criticized for using the final girl trope. And then right whenever I was texting that, bam! Leatherface came out and decapitated Melody, leaving Lila as the final girl. And I was like, yes, it returns, the final girl. Seriously, I was laughing like a maniac because of the timing of that comment and what had happened. It was great. Also, the whole time they were watching Leatherface drown, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You cannot drown Leatherface. Have you never seen any of the Friday the 13th movies? Do they not exist in your universe? Because you cannot drown a slasher icon. One more thing I want to say is that I absolutely loved when they were on the bus, whenever Melody just stabbed Leatherface with a little tiny chainsaw keychain. Sometimes it's the little things in a film that make you really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On this channel, I post book reviews, writing advice, horror commentary, and vlogs. And I just edited a horror anthology called Roadkill 6 Texas Horror by Texas writers. I'll include a link for this in the description box below if you want to check it out. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.